Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First Live.
Fish on First Live, presented by About the Fans. We are back as usual at the start of every new Marlins series, and this time at the start of a 9-game Marlins homestand, the third to last homestand of the entire year. My, how this stuff flies by every single time. I am Eli Sussman. That's Isaac Azout by my side. Special guest on this one of our valued super subs as well, Sean Millerick. How's everything going, Sean?
Oh, going great. Starting to get back into the groove of following Marlins baseball. Was gone for a couple months overseas, made it hard to watch games live. So, piecing together my box scores, recaps, memes, and great content from you guys to follow what's been a very interesting season.
Yeah, and I'm sure that your record was a lot better when you weren't watching and in the country than it is since you've come back. So, not going to pressure you into taking another trip, but the fact that they've come down to as much as they have the last couple of years, maybe not a coincidence, Sean. That's been with you around here. Yeah, so we will hop in. There's a lot of news coming in between these series during the Red Sox series. First of all, Isaac, we want to start with the very end of this one against the Red Sox. Losing 2 out of 3, salvaging the final game. You had an inkling in our private chat about Marlins potentially being able to pull off an upset, because when it looks as lopsided on paper as it does, facing Garrett Crochet, the ace of the Red Sox, that and if having a lineup that was missing Kyle Stowers among others, like it looks pretty lopsided on paper, but baseball tells us when you least expect it, that's when you get some of those surprises right there. So Crochet did his thing, and yet the Marlins able to do enough craziness against that Red Sox bullpen to pull it out and salvage the finale.
Yeah, on the board, on the slate for Major League Baseball on Sunday, the Red Sox were the heaviest favorite across all 15 games played on Sunday. So I just thought, usually when that happens, the bookmakers and the Las Vegas casinos like to make a little bit of money there. But yeah, it was probably one of the least exciting lineups that Miami has put out in recent days, and against one of the best pitchers, the guy who leads all of Major League Baseball in strikeouts in Garrett Crochet. And that's the reason why we love baseball. That's why you play the game. And going into the 9th inning, down by a run, Marlins were able to come back and secure at least one of those victories in Fenway Park. And that's going to be one of the more emotional rides of that game. You see the Dane Myers failed home run robbery attempt. The ball goes into the bullpen for a home run, and he is the one who comes back and ties the game in the 9th inning. Not against Aroldis Chapman, against someone else they had to put in because Chapman was not available. That goes back to Saturday's game, in which Miami was able to put a few runs across late, which forced them to use Chapman. So you could give some credit there. And then you see Jacob Marsee didn't even start this game against Garrett Crochet. He came into the game late, got a base in his first at-bat, and he comes in that 9th inning for his second at-bat and hits a very impressive 2-run shot down Pesky's pole to really put the game away. So Sunday was a great end to the week for sure.
We have to circle back also to the first game of that series and the decision, the pitching usage late in that one. Sean Sandy had maybe his best start of the entire season. Didn't get enough run support, but it was still tied going into the bottom of the 9th. It came up a lot in the moment, a lot of first guessing the decision to put in Josh Simpson in that scenario with the game on the line to push the game potentially into extra innings against the top of the Red Sox lineup. Did that particular decision gnaw at you the same way that it did other people? Because there were other controversial moves along the way during the course of this road trip, but I know at least internally with us, that was one where even listening to the explanation afterwards had a lot of people frustrated by the fact that this is a team that all of a sudden is losing a lot of the close games and that they were previously winning. And when that happens, naturally, a lot of the anger falls at the feet of the manager. So Clayton McCullough, a guy that had a lot of people behind him at times this season, it felt like that kind of one decision may have flipped the sentiment pretty strong the other way.
Oh, yeah, no, pulling my hair out. I mean, again, getting back into the swing of things, I'm like, I've got to be missing something. I started, diving into splits. Maybe there's something I missed about Simpson just being an artist, and no, in that scenario, trying to get my head around it. Obviously, the last couple weeks haven't gone the way the team wanted. This kind of season, the whole time we knew is going to be about development and getting guys used to things. But in that situation, at that spot in the game, I'd feel the same way. I think if any pitcher had the outing that Sandy had, young kid, veteran, whoever had done that, then you try to win. But just feel like, especially Sandy, and putting together that kind of outing, you don't do that to your horse. Let's mix metaphors here. The guy who's going to, maybe more than any player in Marlins history, is going to run through a flaming brick wall, for your team when he's out there, wants, everything he can to win. And then that's how you treat the end of the game, with everyone rested partly because of what he helped do, up to that point. I just saw that as unforgivable to take the let's have a teaching moment approach at the end of that contest. You do that when you're blown out, not when it's close.
Yeah, the issue was Sandy wasn't eligible for the win anyway. But the fact, the problem I think that a lot of people had is the inconsistency over the last couple of weeks. Miami had not been getting as many wins as they had previously, but the Mets had been even worse. So the Marlins were just as far away from a playoff spot as they had been when they were being really aggressive with their bullpen usage and throwing at Ronnie Henriquez in the 8th inning and the 9th inning of tie games or 1-run lead or deficits. And then here you go. You do have two lefties at the top of that Boston lineup for Simpson to face. However, it's just not a situation. I understand the developmental season part of it. Obviously, the 2013 Marlins. This is something that has been around baseball for a while, but this is the major leagues at the same time. And if you have an opportunity to win a ball game in Fenway Park, especially to lead off a series, you don't just sort of punt the game and see what you have in a guy who has been in the organization since 2019, Josh. It's not like, he's a recent draft, but you want to make sure he's been around for a long time. And I was pulling my hair out as well with you, Mr. Sean. That was a very questionable call. I didn't like it whatsoever. You just knew that they're going to get their ass kicked the next day too. We just knew that was going to happen. Luckily, they were able to salvage Sunday, but I didn't. You brought in the Sandy point. It's probably not fun to see your gem get wasted away there. And boy, Simpson, really tough role for Simpson to go into. I mean, facing the meat of that Red Sox lineup in Fenway Park, it was just seemed like a lose-lose situation for everyone involved.
To address this question, I do think Clayton has quite a long leash at this particular position. A reminder that some of this stuff is actually realistically can improve over time as you get more experience and a better feel for exactly how to do the job. He made somewhat of an unusual big leap to go from a first base coach to a major league manager. Typically, somebody has some sort of stint as a bench coach in between or as a manager at a very high level of baseball. He managed in the lower minor leagues at one point. This is a big adjustment for him in all aspects of it. And the fact that the team overall is still achieving significantly more than people thought they were entering the year, I think he is still in a pretty comfortable spot moving forward. As we've kind of referenced on the show throughout the year, it seems pretty obvious that there is input elsewhere in the organization on a lot of decisions that get made during the game. And I think that's true in a lot of organizations at this point in the major leagues. That's the way the position has evolved to some aspect. So just because something backfires terribly during a Marlins game doesn't mean it's only because of a decision that McCullough made in isolation on his own. So I think he is safe for quite a while. And he was making, frankly, some of these decisions that weren't all that different early in the season. It's just that they were working out better. There were relievers that were performing better than we thought they would. I mean, there was skepticism about Josh Simpson in this particular instance, but there was a time where there's a lot of skepticism about Tyler Phillips early in the year. And he gradually has worked in some pretty important situations and done quite well, dating back to really the middle of May or early June, compared to a guy that used to be a waiver claim. And when Ronnie Henriquez entered this season, he was a waiver claim that was not held in particularly high regard. And you need to find out, for these guys to actually surprise you and turn into more than you believe they could be. Putting them in those situations in the first place is pretty important in terms of actually getting them in that situation, getting them to actually break out and evolve into really prominent members of the pitching staff. So it didn't work out here at all. It's just that I think it's worth noting that there have been other unpopular relief decisions made over the course of this year that actually have worked out, and we've seen guys sort of blossom as a result of that.
Yeah, I mean, the difference there is that everyone you let those sort of things happen naturally, and when everyone was ready to go and available in that Friday night game, like Ronnie was, like Fauché was clearly, because he came in to mop it up, which he obviously wasn't able to do. Then you sort of use a Simpson, but you just sort of force that. Hey, let's put him in one of the worst situations possible. I think that's where sort of some people have had a little bit of an issue with it.
We have to bring
just
up
with everyone fresh. I just don't get it. Like that was the second thing I checked after the splits was did they have a massive bullpen game the day before? Did I miss that? Like kid's first day of school was the day. It's like I could have missed that. That's possible. Then like no, everyone's really ready to go for the game.
We have to take a closer look at Marsee, because he's come up on the show pretty much every single series because of how well he's doing. And yet again, he finds himself in such a big moment against this Red Sox team. The way that he was able to hit that ball out, a pitch that wasn't a meatball by any means, just shows just the complete offensive player that he's been so far. So these are stats courtesy of running from the OPS, just showing that in the month of April, he leads the major leagues in all of these categories. He is the highest average among qualified hitters in the majors in the month of August. On-base percentage, slugging, WRC plus, wins above replacement, most importantly, and everything in between, while playing center field, while also being a plus base runner. This is a guy that moved up our prospect list over the course of the first half of the season, but even we did. This is just unprecedented for at least a Marlins player. Nothing like this ever has happened in Marlins history, where a guy has been this dominant the first few weeks of his major league career. I saw comments earlier about maybe pumping the brakes because we remember how Augustine was red hot at the start of his big league career. I think I've mentioned separately about how when Connor Norby, when he was acquired in last year's trade deadline, and as soon as he got called up, he went off on a torrid stretch. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like this complete picture of a guy that's hitting for power and taking walks. He's been a true 5-tool guy in this sample, with doing in practically every single game, doing something important, in several games, doing the most important thing and being the best player on the field. What is your excitement level, Sean? Because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this. I'm somebody that generally does not overreact much to small samples. And I'll get into like the context for all that. It's just that this has been surreal. This is something that it's hard to put into context when it really hasn't happened before. There has not been a Marlins hitter that has hit the ground running this hard and made it so seamlessly as one of the best players in baseball right out of the gate.
Oh, it's huge. I just it keeps going. Like we're at like 17 games now. I mean, anyone can come in and have that big first game, that big at bat that starts things off. Go for 4 for 5, 6 for 10 to start off their career. This has been running to like an absurd point now. Just of all the other big names that didn't do this either. Giancarlo Stanton, Mike Stanton then did not do this. Miguel Cabrera did not do this. Hanley started with Boston, so that doesn't count. Dan Uggla did not do this. When he came up, these other big esteemed sluggers that started their career with the Marlins have not had this kind of start. And just across baseball overall, you just don't see this production. Plenty of perennial all-stars did not start their career this way. Is that to say Jacob Marsee is one of those? No, still very small sample size in a 162 game season sport. But the more this goes, this is something where all of a sudden you have a player you can feel really confident, maybe plugging into that lineup as being a part of this team as someone who is absolutely going to be one of those players you count on in 2026. And I don't think we would have been here saying that, a few weeks ago or even close to this.
What aspect of what he's doing is surprising you most, Isaac, compared to the way we evaluated him based on what we saw from him in the minors? What elements of it did you not see him being quite this good at least not this early?
We knew the walks would be there. We knew the play discipline was there. We saw it with the OBP. He did not chase a ton at Jacksonville. We sort of knew that part of his game was going to be there. We knew he was going to hit a little bit. I'm torn between the power and the hit. I think they've both just really surpassed everyone's expectations. It's hard to fathom what he's doing against both righty and lefty. His major league debut was against lefty. He did Marlins huge vote of confidence, having him bat third against the lefty tonight. And Matthew Liberatore, I'm going to have to go with just the offensive impact by this young man who is not a huge guy, not a super tall guy, just an average-looking man who I don't think you'd think was a major league athlete if you saw him walking down Publix. And just the bat speed that he has and the ability to pull the ball over almost any major league fence has been extremely impressive. I can't remember the last time I saw him swing at a ball. It's the overall impact offensively has really been a treat to watch. And Miami may have something special. Like Sean said, it's a very small sample. But in every single facet of a major league player that you look at, he has been extraordinary defensively as well. I haven't really seen him have an opportunity to throw a guy out or have an outfield assist yet. Maybe I'm missing a couple examples, but so I get a closer look at the arm. But defensively, he looks great. And then, like I said, just the play discipline and the quality of at-bats. The quality of at-bats, every single at-bat of his has been a quab, as we like to call it, and it's been a lot of fun to watch. I don't feel safer about anyone else coming up to plate than him.
Yeah. To this point, he had an uneven minor league track record. We really didn't know what to do with his 2024 season when he hit 200 in the minors over the course of a full-length season. And it's very old-fashioned to look at batting average, but history will tell you that your minor league average largely sets the ceiling for what you can do at the major league level in that particular category. There are so few examples, so few exceptions to that rule, where you're just not going to hit more in the majors than you do in the minors, which is why the guys that are true top prospects coming up through the minors are guys that are at least flirting with 300. We knew about the walk rate, as you said, and kind of the swing decisions, and that has translated immediately and shown that one of the many things he's doing at an elite level is just not swinging at balls. We just didn't think the batted ball quality was going to be good enough against major league defenses and major league scouting reports to produce this many hits. And to this point, it's naturally something that will come down to some extent as opponents learn more about him. The thing is, it's important to differentiate between the results and the process. And people are always going to get excited when the results are there immediately. The results were there immediately with Gus and with Norby after he was acquired via trade. They've even been there for Heriberto Hernandez for a lot of this season. The results have been very good, all very good offensive players for a period of time. The thing is whether we actually believe it's sustainable. And with Marsee, the thing is, like, the underlying stuff are just as impressive as the surface numbers. His expected stats across the board are the best in the majors. His expected weighted on base average is better than Aaron Judge's this year. It's almost equal to his actual results. Like, he is hitting the ball well every single time at these optimal angles. But that in particular is what surprises me, is that he's hitting these so many line drives at these angles that he really didn't all that consistently in the minors. Last year, why he was getting out so often is there was a lot of pop-ups and a few too many grounders, but it was more so just fly balls that weren't finding holes. And he has made enough subtle mechanical adjustments to hit balls at angles where they're more likely to fall into hits or the small sample size. That's what makes this really hard for me to downplay, is because under the hood, he's been elite as well. It's not only these numbers that he's putting up itself. It's just like, if he continued to play like this, he is going to be a star player. The question is whether anybody could realistically continue to play this well on an everyday basis. And the short answer is no, just because there's going to be some adjustments from opponents where they're going to notice certain patterns in terms of what he's doing well and try to negate that. And eventually there's a little bit of luck that will even out. It's just that there's so little luck involved with this. The process has just been absolutely perfect in a way that I'm ecstatic about. And it's very, for somebody that I kind of comp to a Brett Gardner type when he was called up a few weeks ago, a guy that I thought would get on base quite a bit and be a valuable overall player that could peak as an all-star. I think just off the top of my head, I don't think Brett Gardner in his very long career ever had a month quite like this where he had this kind of ceiling as an overall player. So it's been awesome, and they've given him pretty immediately this opening to play practically every single day, especially with the Kyle Stowers injury that leaves one less mouth to feed in the outfield, where you would think only against in very particular situations he might still be relieved for a pinch hitter, just because that's what this team believes in. They believe very strongly in platoon advantages, but I mean, he's done everything possible to show that he's a real everyday guy on a team that doesn't have a lot of those. They have X and they have Otto to some extent, and even he's been kind of streaky. And aside from that, everybody else to some extent, they get platooned a little bit. But Marsee is putting himself in a situation where he's kind of a staple of this team in a very small sample. So I've been
Ramirez too.
Yeah, that's true with Gus. That they have. Yeah, and we'll see exactly how that plays out. The complication is how they're looking beyond this year in terms of where they're going to get him in the lineup every day, whether he's a catcher or not, and who else needs room on the DH spot, stuff like that. Very quick look at the wild card stuff before we go to our press box report. I kind of sworn that I was going to stop doing this just because this road trip, when you have a 3-8 road trip, it feels like, and you lose a couple key players, as we'll get into shortly, that the path for them to make up this ground doesn't seem all that realistic. But the Mets continue to play pretty bad. They had a very rare series win this past weekend, and that's stretched the lead to 7. The thing is, they still play head-to-head, these teams, another 6 times or so down the stretch. So they're still going to be, as long as there's still going to be the opportunity to close that gap in head-to-head play, and the other teams in between don't look particularly sturdy themselves, then it's still worth keeping an eye on here. And they play one of those teams coming up these next few days in the Cardinals, where if they sweep that series, there you can leapfrog the Cardinals. If they could just win the series, then they pull within half a game. So as bad as this road trip was, it came against teams that they're not really competing against at this point, where the Braves, even though the Braves are as hot as any of these teams, they're not necessarily trying at this point. And the Guardians and Red Sox both in the American League. So as bad as it was, it could have been worse because they could have actually been playing other teams in the race, and instead, not so much. It was just kind of losing in a vacuum in their case.
Yeah, that's they were. I believe the closest they were was 5 games. I want to say 5.5, and so after
5
3
at
road
one
trip,
moment, it might have been 5.
Right, 5. So to be only 7, it's really a breath of fresh air. Considering the 3-8 road trip, but just seeing what they did on Friday, right? They sort of think they're out of it as well, and that really just takes. Sort of kicks every Marlins fan in the tuchus because they really don't believe. They don't even think they're in it, which I understand. There's 4 teams. I think it's not just so much the games back; it's the amount of teams that are in between them and the Mets. So I understand why it's so unlikely. I think Fangraphs has them at less than 1% last time I checked. But still, if there's even a little bit of a chance, business-wise and baseball-wise, I think it's important to at least continue to put your best guys until at least September. But yeah, the standings. The casual baseball fan will look at the standings and say, "Hey, look, the Marlins are with less than 10 games back of a playoff spot." But I guess the front office does not see it that way.
And we should now touch on the Stowers injury, suffering, oblique strain, both him and Graham Pauley with the same diagnosis here, going out for what should be multiple weeks, but not necessarily season ending right here. I was joking with Sean before we started recording that this oblique strain epidemic is a full-blown epidemic at this point. They've had, by my count, 6 big leaguers over the course of the year miss time with the same exact injury, whether it's to the left side or the right side. It was early on. It was Jesus Sanchez and Connor Norby entering the season. It was Dane Myers right when he was playing some of his best ball, going down for a few weeks with that one in May and early June. And now both Stowers and Graham Pauley in consecutive days landing on the IL right here. So, Sean, we're expecting Stowers back at some point before the end of the year, but I think it's safe to say it's going to be very difficult to replace him at some point. He's been a staple of this lineup. He goes without saying that he's been their most valuable player overall over the course of the season. So it's going to get complicated in terms of how they try to mix and match the corner outfield spots for the time being, now that he's sidelined for a bit.
Yeah, well, first off, we've got in baseball's second biggest gym, which I think has paid a lot of dividends this season. We've got to replace the whatever machine they works the oblique the most. We got to get a couple new ones in there, or check that out because this epidemic's getting out of hand this season. But yeah, no, it's a big blow with Stowers on how quickly he comes back. I would think that's going to in part depend on probably how this next week goes. This homestand, and if they're start turning things around and keeping it competitive, and that puts a little more pressure on them, even despite what we saw on Friday from taking the stakes of the game seriously to get him back in there. But if the losing, the losses continue to outnumber the wins, then maybe they give Kyle plenty of time to stretch out that oblique can really look for an excuse to overdo it. But yeah, he's been the heart of the team, the best hitter, Marsee's closing the gap on him, but he's still been the big success breakaway story of the season, I think. And yeah, it's going to be really whatever narrow window there was to do something surprising, that's probably died with Stowers or Blake, unfortunately.
Yeah, I the one thing I was looking at was also, I know some guys might get a chuckle, and it seems like a Marlins family thing to say, but he was maybe getting into the conversation to get some top 5 MVP votes. If it's number 5, just look at how well he was doing, how well the Marlins were doing, how awful Peter Crow Armstrong has been. I thought there was an outside chance that he would receive a vote or two, with obviously Shohei Ohtani being unanimous MVP first place getter. But yeah, with Stowers, just like you said, Sean, the heart and soul of that lineup. And really early on, the success of this team really correlated with him being in the lineup or not, or him doing poorly or not. When the Marlins reached a season high 16 games under 500, Stowers was struggling. And then obviously with their uptick in wins came Stowers' insanely hot stretch close to the deadline, past the deadline. And I think maybe Miami also saw that as, they're not going to be able to do this without Stowers. I still think they can be sort of navigate and be close to 500 the rest of the way without their best hitter. But it's just going to get awfully tough for this lineup to be as successful as they were previously without Mr. Stowers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here is a look at where we stand 40-man roster-wise. We'll get into Acosta in a moment when Kevin hops on. Right on cue. I'm good at that, aren't I?
You sure are.
Yeah, so we'll Paulie and Stowers now out with their obliques right here. So it's an outfield with Marsee surrounded by a bunch of right-handed hitters. There's Dane, of course, still in there, who hit that very big home run, and still continue to get quite a bit of playing time. Joey Wiemer got called up, and it was an interesting case where he was available because he was struggling so much at AAA. He took off on fire as soon as the Marlins claimed him and sent him to Jacksonville. Then he gets brought up here. I'm kind of the opinion that they would have gone with Victor Mesa Jr. if VMJ was fully healthy. As it turned out, VMJ had been on the IL just until yesterday. And VMJ came back yesterday, had a big game himself as a DH. Still needs a little time to work into action. I would not be surprised if we see Mesa come up at some point in these next couple weeks as to be I think is a more fitting fill-in for Stowers than Wiemer is. Small sample size, but Wiemer did not look very competitive in his at-bats yesterday in that first game. And I don't think they necessarily have high hopes for him. He's more of a project for 2026, if I had to, my understanding, when they claimed him in the first place. It did not seem like they believed he's fully fixed after just a few weeks. I think that's going to take an off season to understand where you stand with him overall. And Hernandez, of course, just means he's going to get even more playing time moving forward. I think he could be close to an everyday player for the time being, between the corner outfield spots and occasional DH when Augustine is catching. We're going to see a lot of Heriberto to try to back up what he's been doing so far. And then still Derek Hill hanging on. He'll play center field. I think based on what the team's been doing, Derek Hill is the one guy they feel is even better defender than Marsee is in center field. So Hill's going to continue to get occasional starts over there. Troy Johnson kind of still an emergency outfield situation. I think for the most part, his playing time is going to come at first base moving forward whenever Wagaman is not in there. As we're joined by Kevin Barral now on the Press Box Report. We haven't gone into Maximo much at all, Kevin, so that'll be your specialty right here. You were there on the debut of Maximo Costa, starting second baseman tonight, a very rare off day for X. Take us through, first of all, what he had to say talking to the media pregame about becoming a big leaguer.
Yeah, he's very happy. He's very, very happy to be here. I think that speaks for itself. He said that this is a very, I guess, he said it was like a lot of mixed feelings because his father actually passed a couple months ago. And, he had mentioned that his father, dreamed of this day that he would be in the stands watching his son play. Unfortunately, not the case. But yeah, a lot of mixed feelings. He says he's willing to do whatever he can to help the team win, as I think everyone would say at that point. But yeah, I mean, he got off to a really bad start. He got off. Actually, I lied. He got off to a very nice start, and then slumped for the next 2 months throughout May and April. From June on, his OPS has been close to 800. He's been solid. The power's there. Defensively, no reason he shouldn't be moving off of shortstop. He's only at short. He's only playing second because you have Otto Lopez out there. It's a little tougher, but overall, it's a good call up. Guy who just, I think, you got to see what you got at some point, right? And he is the first guy from the Jake Burger trade to make his debut with the Marlins.
Yeah,
That's right. Go ahead, Isaac.
I was just going to mention he's a 40-man roster guy. He had been really hot at Jacksonville, like you mentioned, Kevin. He was in the midst of an 11-game hit streak with AAA, which he had 1,000 OPS. He is striking out a little bit. Obviously, 26% K rate overall in the season in Jacksonville, but he's getting on base at an amount that I'm okay with. He's hitting for enough power, which could make him a really offensive-minded second baseman. I do think he'll play some short at the major leagues this year. All you're going to see Otto, who's been a little bit of a slump, get some reps at short. But did Clayton McCullough, and I'm sure someone asked about where we might see Maximo against righties, lefties. Obviously, he's got those weird reverse splits, but defensively, and how often could we see him in the lineup?
Yeah, he said he's going to get as many opportunities as possible. Also noted that it'll be a lot of shortstop and second base with the casual third base thrown in there. He's never played third base, not in the minors, nowhere. So I'm very curious when they'll actually do this. And right now, I mean, you're really looking at Sanoja and Acosta playing third. Like, that's not the greatest situation. And Sanoja's been solid this, recently. But, I guess if you really want to stretch, you have Wagaman. But I don't think they want to do that, especially how thin they're at first base. So, yeah, he's going to play. I would assume he plays a lot. The fact that he's in there against a lefty speaks for itself with the reverse splits that I had no clue about them until maybe last night. I saw one of Eli's tweets, and I was like, wow, this has been going on for a couple of years now, too. It's not like a one-year thing like we saw with VMJ, for example. This is something that's been going on for quite a bit. So, yeah, there it is. So, yeah, I think he'll be in there as much as possible. I mean, as well. I mean, at this point, at this point in the year, you have to see what you got. I mean, we've said it many times that you guys probably spoke about it at the start of the show with the Josh Simpson's, decision. You want to see what you got, right? I mean, if you're going to do it with Simpson, you may as well do it with Acosta. So I think that's what they're going to do until, well, who knows? We'll see what happens. And Connor Norby seems to be coming back very soon. So I'd assume at that point, Acosta would unfortunately go back down. But we'll see what happens. You never know.
Right. Every time we try to look forward to roster moves and what they're going to do, somebody else gets hurt. So you hope that's not the case. But we should bring it up, though, that Norby is starting a rehab assignment this week. Based on how this team does rehab assignments, it shouldn't last very long. He should be back with the big league team next week, health permitting. So that's a question of who goes down at that point. It'll be interesting to see. But we just touched on right before he joined about Joey Weimer, and he's kind of there kind of by necessity. So I'd be curious to see between those two, Weimer and Acosta, who gets sent down. It depends on how they want to shift playing time from infielders to outfielders and all things. There's a couple different directions you could go with that particular spot. Unfortunately, Kevin, Graham Pauley goes down with his injury. So it's a weird situation in terms of the future of third base, because Norby was supposed to be that guy entering the year, assuming that he took some sort of step forward, and he did not so far this year whatsoever. It's been a little step back, especially offensively. Then Pauley, first part of the year, looks totally out of place, and then comes back up only about a month ago to replace Norby. Has been amazing over the last month, but now he's down with injury. So you have these couple of guys where they've just been so inconsistent. The sample sizes are so small, and now all of a sudden, just you hate to see it come down to injuries, but all of a sudden now Pauley is out for a little while, and Norby seems to have a clearer path. You would think as soon as he gets back from this rehab assignment that he's going to be for some period of time their everyday third baseman again. It's it's a pretty big stretch for him, I guess, right? To finally to wrestle back that position that was slowly slipping away from him.
Yeah, you said it. Paulie should be out for about a month, is what Clayton said. So really, once he comes back, there's not much season left, So I found that to be, interesting. That's how most oblique injuries are. I think Stowers, we'll have to see. I mean, that one is obviously tough. But yeah, I mean, Norby's going to play every day. I'd much rather see him than Sanoha at third base, to be honest with you. So um, this is like a big trial period right now for Norby. See if comes back, see what you got at this point. It's a lot. He was whiffing a lot. The approach wasn't great, but the last week before he got hurt, he had been kind of turning the corner a little bit with a better approach, elevating a little bit more, and he was on a 5-game hit streak too, I believe. So unfortunately, although I think defensively it'll be a little bit worse, I think you've got to assume that the hit tool will hopefully come together at some point, but it's not looking good, regardless of how you slice it. Especially if Paulie comes in on, during spring, towards the end of the year and looks good and continues to look good. I think Paulie is clearly the better defender. And honestly, from I think the sample sizes, I mean, if that's the Paulie you're going to get throughout most of the season. Like, I'd much rather see Grant Paulie start than Connor Norby, if I'm being totally honest with you. Just defensively, the better hit tool, doesn't strike out as much, gets on base a lot more. Like, it's a better approach. I think he's better with bat to ball too. Like, I don't know. I think Paulie's a solid baseball player. So is Norby's a fine player. But right now I would have to give the edge to Paulie, at least going into spring training.
Man, who would have thought going into this season that we'd have Kevin Burrell here saying that he would rather have Graham Paulie starting at third base than Connor Norby? Yeah, with Connor, the issue this season anyway had just been the lack of slug for the most part. Last year, you just saw him almost hit everything. And right center field, left center was really incredible. And so, yeah, I think the one thing that stands out, all of this combined, is the amount of depth that this team has. Look at this. You have a few guys, really solid guys in Sanoha, Paulie, Norby, just at third base alone. You have a Costa coming up now, a lot of middle infield options. And then the outfield, you've got really too many options. So that's something that Peter Bendix has done an extremely good job of just accumulating depth to go into spring training next year. And every single year we say, wow, this is a lot more depth than they've ever had.
And I know we say this, like, I don't know if they'll sign someone, but they should, like, at least bring some competition in at third base, because even if it's like one of those guys like the Trey Mancini type guy who's with the team all the way up until the end, like you're trying to push for the spot, like even if it's that, I think that would be better than nothing. But I think you need to address third, definitely need to address first base, because unfortunately Wagner just isn't the future there. So yeah, there's a lot of decisions, I think, especially at those corner infield spots that need to be made. And eventually, I think you also need to trickle into the outfield, but that's a conversation for later.
Right. Yeah, I was under the assumption that Paulie was fine and going to still be a big part of this team moving forward. I had floated the idea that maybe they pull with Norby what they did with X when he was coming back from injury and say all of a sudden, hey, move to another position. Try playing left field, for example, on your rehab assignment and see how that goes. But then, as it turns out, the injuries take care of themselves a little, just like this. So very often they make the decisions more straightforward. But ultimately, the good news is that Norby kind of recovered ahead of schedule here. It was supposed to be 6 to 8 weeks. We weren't totally sure if he'd be back this year. And as it turns out, assuming no final setbacks at the last moment, he's going to be back in a little bit under 6 weeks removed from surgery. And I think that just speaks to his work ethic, because it's basically the same thing with his oblique strain at the start of the year too, where it was supposed to be over a month that he was out, and it turned out to be less than that. So I think with his intangibles, there's never really been much doubt that he's a guy that works extremely hard and works on the right things in order to get on the field as much as possible. But now he'll have to show it down the stretch. For this series, though, we'll see some Sanoha. Maybe, as you referenced, we might see Acosta once or twice at some point this week at third base, even his lack of experience there. On the starting pitching front, Kevin, it lines up as well as it possibly could for this team on both aspects in terms of who they're facing with the Cardinals and who the Marlins have starting themselves. When it's Yuri, Eddie, and then you have Sandy coming off an amazing start the way that he did. It's kind of the opposite of the previous series, the opposite of the Red Sox series, where it on paper, it looks pretty good for this team to bounce back and win their first series in a while.
Yeah, Yuri just walked out to begin his routine, but yes, this is as good as it gets. It's a 1-2-3 punch that you have to feel pretty confident, especially the way Sandy pitched in that last outing against the Red Sox. It looked like his 2022 self, and the high ground ball percentage. He, the whiffs were here and there. It wasn't the most, but Vila was there, and as crazy as it sounds, he was still throwing that curveball quite a bit. So found that very interesting, but it worked. So you'll take it, and it was very efficient. It was about 14 pitches per inning, which you would like that to go down a little bit, but for the most part, that's more than fine. And he could have even made the case that he could have gotten the seventh if Clayton wanted to. And when you look at it, the seventh would have been pretty great to get. So, yeah, I mean, Yuri's coming off a good start. Cabrera as well. I think he's coming off the 8-inning start, I want to say, or the one he pitched in Boston, right?
Yeah, 2 starts ago was the 8-inning masterpiece against the Braves. Okay. And then the most recent one was the shaky one against the Guardians.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, and then not a great 3 guys for the Cardinals, huh? I mean, not looking great. Liberatore feels like that's a name you see at the first game of spring training for against the Marlins, pitching against them.
Yeah.
Michael McGreevy, I think is how you say it. I think he's a prospect, and then Palante's been around for a bit, so yeah, we'll see. I think the one thing to note is John Jay's back here. He was the Marlins' first base coach, outfield coach, and Vinny Ziano's here too. He got recalled. And I know Isaac will appreciate this one. Pedro Pajes, FAU guy, here as well. So a lot of, South Florida ties and former Marlins as well on the Cardinals.
Okay. But with Kevin contending with the introductions and other background noise, we'll get him out of here on that. I remember to upload your prediction video, very brief one by your standards right here. We'll get that going towards the end of the show. Very good. And yeah, aside from that, follow your coverage. You're going to be there, I think, all 3 games of this series. So yeah.
The one thing I need to know, and I need to note this, Joey Weimer looks exactly like Kyle Stowers. I thought it was Kyle Stowers, but yes, for anyone who comes to the game, it's Joey Weimer. Kyle Stowers isn't even here, but yeah, they look identical. I needed to note that at one point. I know Nate has mentioned that before, but yeah, he's not a great baseball player, but looks just like Kyle Stowers. So who knows?
They also hit from opposite sides of the plate, but yes.
Yes, looks wise on it, Isaac.
Yes.
He's not even playing tonight.
Yes.
Okay. Kevin Barral, Press Box Report. Thank you, Kevin. And yeah, we will follow your coverage throughout this homestand, this Marlins team. And one more look at the pitching matchups there. Andre Palance, I think I had him on my fantasy team last year when he was actually decent, and this year's been a big step back. A 5.04 ERA. The strikeouts have gone down significantly. The home run rate has spiked more than double. The Cardinals are a bad team, especially offensively as of late. I don't think people have realized this, that they have the 2nd worst record in baseball since the All-Star break. They are in not as publicized of a nosedive as the Mets, for example, but over that period of time, they've been approximately just as bad. That's a reason why they kind of turned into soft sellers at the deadline. It hasn't really gotten much better for them since then. They are in a pretty bad spot. They have a lineup. We'll get to the lineup now. Right now we'll pull up the lineup where it's relatively deep with guys that are kind of interesting, but basically none of them are doing well as of late or for the season overall. They're not necessarily building upon what you kind of thought they would be for most of their careers, or where the progress they would make that they were assumed to be making really across the board. Not a single guy that's really having a career year. Ivan Herrera got off to an amazing start, but he's kind of fizzled out as of late as well. Pedro Pajes, got to mention, just because of Isaac's history with him, somebody that you've known. And it's good to see him get a long big league opportunity here this year, but he's one of the easier outs in this lineup, with all due respect, especially when he's facing right-handed pitching right here. Sean, haven't heard from you in a while on this Cardinals team. Is there anybody, who are you most afraid of in this Cardinals lineup as it's currently constructed?
3 catchers in the lineup. That's effectively between Contreras, Herrera, and Pajes. Herrera's probably been one of he's been the other great story this year, along with Augustine, for young up and coming catchers. So him probably. It's that 1-2 at the top of the order between Nootbaar and Herrera, just in terms of their ability to get on base, wait for pitches. I think that could be problematic. At least later on in the game, once the starters get out of there. But I'll settle on Herrera. He scares me the most. Wilson's the veteran, but he's coming back from injury. I think his ankle's bothering him on there. So there's a lot of guys banged up in this lineup. And then obviously you see Nolan Arenado's not in it. So some guys that are even more banged up as well. So Herrera is who spooks me the most.
They also just put Victor Scott on the IL. He's the guy that wasn't hitting very much, but at least his defense and base running was pretty impactful. He'd been their primary center fielder most of this year. That's why we get this Nathan Church fellow, who was very recently called up. I frankly don't know a whole lot about him, but I think I'd comfortably assume that's somewhat of a downgrade defensively and base running compared to their usual center fielder that's in there. A lot of guys that had hype coming up, like Nolan Gorman, who at this point in his career is striking out 30% of the time, and that kind of washes away a lot of what the positives that he does offensively. Wilson Contreras, as you touched on, he's still good, and he's now their everyday first baseman. But in Kevin, we didn't even bring it up in the press box report. Apparently, he had an amazing batting practice show today, Wilson Contreras. So we'll see how that translates into the game when he's facing 99-mile-per-hour fastballs from Yuri instead of 69-mile-per-hour meatballs from the pitching machine. But it's he certainly has that upside, and you see he has been hitting the ball hard all year. In fact, he's been a little bit unlucky based on the bottom line results. But still, I'll reiterate, this team has been in an extended slump, especially offensively, and just as much as the Marlins have been over these last couple weeks. So it is really two teams that are in similar situations. And in terms of vibes overall, I think the Marlins might be in a slightly better place when you take all those intangibles into consideration. I don't think we touched on it, but it is a rare off day for Xavier Edwards, his first in nearly 2 months. You have to go back to late June, the last time X had a day off of any kind, and that's why Otto is batting in the leadoff spot. We mentioned it on the previous show that he's been in pretty considerable slump, and we'll see if facing mediocre pitching helps him break out of it, but shows that the team still has complete faith in him. The call up of Acosta, not really about coming for Otto's job, more so than just about filling out the infield in the aftermath of Paulie going down. Yeah, Marsee right there. I guess we should touch on Eric Wagman. This came up a little bit in our chat today, Isaac, about how Wagman's been good now for a couple of weeks on a part-time basis. It's a small sample, but yesterday, do they win yesterday's game if he doesn't hit that home run off Garrett Crochet? He was the only one that did damage off of Crochet, and it was the longest home run the Marlins have hit all year. This is a guy where the raw power has never really been a question. It's more so that we've barely seen it at all in real games. So he has there's been more of the extra base hit stuff. He had a triple also in that Red Sox series as well that went high off the wall. So with Wagman, they've been very, 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 very patient with this man. The fact that he's one of the few guys that's been on the Marlins roster all year long, despite the bad results. And he is, for a guy that you could say maybe was a little bit better than the overall stats would have suggested for much of the year. And things are evening out a little bit in order to any questions about him sticking on this roster seem to have subsided. He has a role on this team, at least on a part-time basis.
Yeah, for now. And I think with like sort of the mediocrity you're seeing from Troy, unfortunately, I think they do like the power that this guy offers. That home run that he hit in Fenway was the longest of any Marlin this season. And right after a 9-game stretch in early to mid-June, July, where I think we had reached our limit when it came to patience for this guy. He went like 9 straight games without a single hit. And since then, July 26th on, he has played just like an above average first baseman. He's got an OPS of 851 in those 50 plate appearances, 17 games since July 26th. He's getting on base all of a sudden. He is slugging 500 in that stretch, and he has been extremely hot, particularly against left-handed pitching, in which they are facing today in Matthew Liberatore. So, yeah, we have been really, frustrated with both his offense and his defense, but he has really, should I say, turned a corner in the last couple of weeks or so, and turned into, over the last 2 weeks, he has been one of the better offensive first basemen in baseball. Can he keep this up for the rest of the year? That'll be something I'm really curious to see. I don't know how much they're going to let him play against righties, but with all these injuries stacking up, it might not have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lineup itself, it never looks particularly pretty when the Marlins face a lefty, just because of how strongly they believe in platoon advantage. We referenced it before. I'll reiterate again that Acosta, throughout his minor league career, he's had these pretty big reverse platoon splits where he hits a lot worse against lefties than righties. And I honestly do not know what to make of it. And I'm genuinely curious in terms of how the baseball operations department makes sense of that now that he gets called up. And gets called up in this role where he's heavily going to be facing left-handed pitching, despite struggling against left-handed pitching in the minors year after year after year, especially this year, with an OPS in the low 500s against lefties. So I'll be fascinated to see exactly how that works. He's a guy where the strikeouts have been up this season, but not so much because of swing and miss. I'd actually say more of it is because he can get too passive at times. So that's something to watch for with him. And I think the reason why they felt comfortable calling him up, despite an well worse than average strikeout rate, is because it's not necessarily about a hit tool question. It's more so about the swing decisions. And that is, there have been several guys this year on this Marlins team that have shockingly surprised us with their swing decisions in a good way. So we will see if he's yet the latest example of somebody that clicks despite facing tougher competition and all of a sudden becomes a better version of himself, a Jacob Marsee light, if you will, on the infield. But there's only going to be, we think, health permitting, this could be a pretty short stint for Costa, with Connor Norby's return looming and that rehab assignment about to begin. I guess we could also touch on Ryan Weathers throwing live batting practice on Wednesday, which should be the final step before he goes out on a rehab assignment. So a Ryan Weathers return to the Marlins seemingly within view before the end of the year. And we'll continue to update his progress on our streams leading up to his hopeful return sometime second half of September. Without further ado, final segment of the show. Let's go to prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this year.
Never gets old.
There is our leaderboard so far, and you see Sean Millerick, our special guest. He is in 7th place for the time being. I have slimmed down the cutoff here, which removes myself from the entire picture because it's been that bad of a year from my perspective. I think this is more or less the group that's still mathematically alive for the rest of the year, with another 14 series to go, 13, 14, something in that general range. Hector Rodriguez of our staff is in 1st place, but we keep track of the predictions from our staffers, our live stream guests, and our super subs as well. You have about 15 minutes before first pitch if you are a super sub to leave your prediction on the site or in the Marlins Discord server, if you will. And we will count that and continue to keep track of it the rest of the way. How many games the Marlins will win in the series? It's yet again a 3-game set. Who will be the series MVP as determined by win probability added? I know that he has leaned negative for most of the year on this, and you add it all together, and it has actually worked out relatively well, considering the team as a whole is still significantly below 500. And
it's a bit at this point.
As of late, 4 straight series losses for the Marlins coming into this. So in this case, nobody would blame you at all for skewing a little bit negative here. But I will get the music going, and we'll start off with Isaac's series prediction here for the Cardinals series.
4 straight series losses, and that ends right here back in Miami. 9-game homestand. I think that the Marlins, for the first time, I predict they sweep their opposition. I think they sweep the Cardinals with their 3-headed monster of the rotation in Sandy, Yuri, and Cabrera. Series MVP, I'm going to go with Jacob Marsee.
Sean Millerick, your prediction, sir.
Well, it's a bit I've been doing since they got struck by the Rockies, picking the Marlins to lose the series, so I won't stop. I think the Marlins will win 1 game in this series, and Sandy Alcantara will be the MVP.
All right. I'll have the Marlins winning this one 2 out of 3. And I was flirting with the idea of a sweep here, just considering how the Cardinals have been trending for a while coming into this. But ultimately, I think there's enough questions about this Marlins offense in its current state with their recent injuries. And I think 2 out of 3 is a best case scenario here, but one that's in play, snapping their streak of series losses. series MVP here. Let me just double check for a moment. I feel about this. Javier Sanoja. I'll go with Sanoja because he's in the lineup, at least for this first game of the series. A guy that usually puts the ball in play and at least gives himself a chance to have success. This is a Cardinals team that was especially sloppy in their previous series defensively. Sanoja, pretty top of the list of guys that can take advantage of that over the course of these next 3 days. And I put this out of order. Gotta bring in Kevin's press box report from the field as well. So let me try to handle this transition as smoothly as possible and get Kevin's take from Lone Depot Park.
Marlins Cardinals 3-game set. Going to go with the Marlins taking 2 out of 3, and I'm feeling good. Sandy's going to get another big start. He'll be the series MVP. Back to you, Eli.
Yeah, not so bad right there. And figured out that setup where you can plug him into the same background as the rest of us and save me a little bit of time from editing it at the very end right there. But thanks to coverage for Kevin for his press box report. He's there the next couple of days. Isaac will be there as well later on in the series. This has been Fish on First Live, presented by About the Fans. Use our promo code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Get hats, t-shirts, stickers, other accessories. The Gus Bus shirt, like this one. I'm always very terrible about remembering to show my shirt on the stream when I'm wearing some of our own merch. We're going to be back on Thursday. On the off day, we're going to do Marlins Jeopardy for the first time all season, if I remember correctly, where it's going to focus mainly on recent Marlins history, very recent stuff, with our staffers competing on this one. We'll be accepting fan submissions as we always do for an audience questions category. That information will be on the site fishonfirst.com if you want to submit. But Thursday, 6 p.m., we'll be back on the stream wherever you're watching right now to enjoy. Thanks to Isaac. I'm Eli Sussman, and our special guest, Sean Millerick, who's also a very high-profile Jeopardy trivia submitter through the years. So I'm sure he won't let us down, adding more material to this upcoming show as well. But thanks again for the support of what we do, and we'll talk to you again soon. As always, go.
Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.